Hi, everyone. Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. I'm having a Monday. I hope everyone else is having a happy Monday. I guess at the end of the day, I could simply just say it is a Monday, and I guess it could be worse. Anyway, I have been testing and testing this for like 10, 15 minutes. And of course, the moment I finally get it going, the neighbor's dog has to start up and they're out and I'm sure they're running around and it drives me insane. But we're not going to talk about that right now. I want to talk about something a lot more fun. So I did try to record another video last night and it was about 10 o'clock at night. I was exhausted. I was rambling and it was a mess. I was like, there's no way no, we're not going to post this one. So I thought I'd redo it today. I thought today would also be a good day to kick off the next segment of my Coloring at Any Budget series. And what we're going to cover first now, well, let me talk about what you're seeing right now because you're like, what is this massive mess? I've talked numerous times about the fact that I had gotten a just whole mess of markers and colored pencils from my brother when a few years after he graduated high school. He's about 12 years younger than me. And while I've added to this sum, and I'll explain what I have added, this was essentially what I got, both in a marker or a water-based marker and in a colored pencil format. So the cool thing is, though, like especially with these broad tip markers, these things have to be like at least 10 to 15 years old. And I haven't found a dry one yet, which probably means I'll find a dry one today because that's just how it goes for me. But they are still in great shape. And all of these are what you would call budget markers. I would say $10 or less, just depending on how many you get. Sometimes if you get like a 100 pack or something, it might be a little higher. But if you're just looking at a, standard pack you would get for like when your kids start school and stuff, I mean, you're even talking probably under $5 for most of these. But these are all like budget-based markers. And the great thing about them is apparently they stand the test of time. And I will probably continue to use these for years, and heaven forbid that, like 5 years from now, I'm still doing this and we're not in some like Mad Max Fury Road kind of world, dystopian world where, I'm going to try to eat the markers instead of actually coloring them. Now, let's hope that's not the case, but hey, look, I have stated I can be a pessimist. So I guess that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I don't know. Do markers have calories? Okay, I'm not eating any markers on camera. I'm pretty sure that would give me a lot more views. But now these are probably non-toxic, but you start getting into the Sharpies. And I probably wouldn't be doing these segments for very long if I started chewing on like my Prismacolors and stuff. Anyway, I don't know how I got on that subject. You would think it is 10 o'clock, but it's like 3:30 in the afternoon. I don't know. I'm tired. I did not sleep well last night. But this was, like I said, pretty much what my brother gave me. And it was just a whole grab bag of things, of markers. And they're all water-based. So when I say part one, we're just covering the water-based ones today. The next one will be picking up on our Sharpies and our Bic markings and all of those. So for today, though, I want to focus on the water-based because really, I think if you have kids or you have nieces and nephews or grandkids or what have you, my cats can't hold a marker in their paws. So, this isn't going to do them much good. I try to get them to color and they're just not interested at all. They're more interested in shoving my markers off the desk and chasing them under the bed. Not that that hasn't happened a few times or anything, but usually your Crayolas and your Rosearts and stuff are going to be what's most readily available to you. And since here, especially at the beginning, I'm really trying to stress how you can color with anything. You don't have to even go out and buy anything if you have supplies at the house like this. You don't have to go out and buy a nice, pretty, fresh pack of Crayolas unless you want to. And, you know, you don't have to go do all that. Just grabbing some markers that your kids have, or you have some old colored pencils or somewhere from years ago, like crafts and stuff. Sorry, one of my monitors went dark. I was like, what happened to the light? But you can color with anything, and you can color on anything. So let me go ahead and put this away. One of the biggest reasons I want to do this video is this system's not working for me anymore. I realized when I was trying to prep for all of this that this collection has grown so much now that I have to store these a different way. And I have a really good, I think it'll work out really well where I can just basically store them by color, because while I'll show some preferences in this segment for me, at least what worked well for me, at the end of the day, I will use every type of marker in here in some way, shape, or form. So, but I have to come up with a better way for this. And I was like, I'm going to go ahead and get this video out of the way so I can find a better organization system, because my corner is a massive mess right now. So last Thursday, just to kind of recap, I did an intro to kind of kick this off the series. And one of the things that I talked about was, you know, obviously before you start talking about, you know, what you're going to color with, you got to start thinking about what you're going to color on. And, you know, the mindset I had for this series was that hopefully this will help. I know there are a lot of people out there who either are just starting out or they've wanted to color for a while, but, you know, money's tight. But I'd say for the majority of us, it's, you know, we can't go freely spend at any point in time. And sometimes you may only have, you know, pocket change or something to get have the library print off, you know, some sample pages for you or something. That may be all you can do at the moment, and you want to color and you think, oh, I don't have a set of Prism colors, or I don't have Copics, I don't have Holbeins. And I'm, you know, as a disclaimer, I'm not sitting here knocking that at all, because I have everything from Crayolas to Copics. So I understand that, and I love seeing everybody color with a variety of things. And it's always really cool to me that you can. And I think I'm really grateful that there are so many people that do show coloring in different ways, because I hope that encourages others who may be a little intimidated and think, okay, well, I can't afford new markers or pencils or coloring, a lot of expensive coloring books. You know, hey, you don't have to wait just until that point. You can start any, you know, and the good thing is, if you start out with what you have, you may decide you don't like it. You may decide you start out with colored pencils and they're driving you crazy, and then you may decide you like markers better, or, you know, whatever. So anyway, the recap I had last week. So I was going like just bare bones. Like I said, you've got some pocket change to get started. And I was talking about the options for sample pages that are out there on the internet. Always, another disclaimer, please do not Google free coloring images. A lot of times those are not sanctioned by the artists, and somebody has copied them and is distributing them. Unfortunately, that takes away from the person that actually did the art. And there are plenty of artists who are nice enough to actually offer sample images of their art. And this is a great opportunity to use those sample pages, because you can figure out right off the bat, if you do like coloring, what kind of art do you like, which artist do you like. And then down the road, hopefully, if you're able to save up some money, then you can buy one of their books and support them, or a page off Etsy, you know. So I'm not advocating just using these free pages. So I'll put the link to the first video in the comments. I'm not going to repeat myself everything over that, but that's kind of the gist. And just to roll that up, to show that, I took 3 different types of paper. I printed the exact same image, which is off of, it's a wreck, but at least I kind of know where everything's at. this image was from this book. It is a Bendon coloring book. It's those are a lot of the type of published coloring books you'll find at like Dollar General and your discount stores. The paper is actually pretty decent quality. It's really like a thicker paper. It's not the super thin paper you would see, say, in like a basic kids coloring book. Before we get to that one, though, I wanted to show you, well, maybe I wanted to show you, if I can find it. There it is. This was the very first page that I did with that whole ragtag mess of markers that you just saw. And my plan was to, this was my initial idea, and then I got onto the using the same image on different types of paper. But I pulled out my Crayolas, I had Cra-z-arts and Sargent Art, and I colored this using each brand of marker. The only exception being, and I won't be covering these extensively today. So my goal in this was I wanted to show that, you know, you can create a really awesome coloring page with just, you know, like I said, the random mix of markers that your kids might have or you might have for crafts and stuff. You don't have to have, you know, just Crayolas, or you can use basically whatever you have and you can come up with something really cute. Like, I have to admit, I was actually pleasantly surprised by how much I like this one. But I did try out the different brands. This part here, the yellow and the orange there, is from this brand. I think it's called Imagine. Is that right? Yeah, Imagine or Imagines. This is a 24 pack of their super tip washable markers. I believe I found these at Dollar General. They may have been like $2.50. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is a really good example of quantity does not mean quality. Because sure, you can get you get way more markers in this than you would say in like a 10-pack of Crayolas of the same type. But guys, these are, I would almost rather go out and like crush berries and color with that rather than have to use these. The biggest thing to keep in mind with any type of marker, whether it's water-based or alcohol-based, is the drier the marker, the more damage it's going to do to your paper. So these look pretty good to be, you know, from the get-go. But I noticed, put the cap on the right way, I noticed from the get-go when I started coloring with these, they were so dry, they immediately began tearing up this paper. And it's a little hard to show right here, but when I run my hand over this, I can really feel it. And on a thick page like this, it actually isn't, you know, that's surprising that it would already start, you know, damaging the paper. But it was, yeah, you can see how streaky it is. It's terrible. I probably will not. Those would be ones that I would just flat out say I'm not going to just flat out color with them. But keep those in mind later on, because I have a use for those. You don't have to let anything go to waste. If you get a product you don't like, you can always find a way to use it. It's, you know, you don't have to just immediately toss them. You can always donate them. Probably a lot of elementary schools and daycares and things like that are always on the look for art supplies for their kids. And so you could always donate them. But you can still keep them. You can still get a use out of them, even if you're not a big fan of them. So the rest of these were, I think these were Crayolas. I did just a basic kind of color blend between the green and the blue. I think this was both Crayola and Cra-z-art. And then I think this blue, like right here, was Sargent Art. So I had 4 different brands of markers I was essentially working with, and this came out really good. The biggest issue I had was just the type of the markers that they really were kind of ripping into the paper. Even the Crayola and the Cra-z-arts kind of got that. And I'll show that in more detail here in a minute. Now, remember those, these things I just showed you? If this is all you have to work with, and that's why I was saying you can color with anything. As much as I'm not a huge fan of these. And, oh, well, I'll talk about that as an aside in a minute. You can use these if, like I said, if you're limited with what you have to work with and they're really dry markers and they're kind of ripping up the paper you're using and you're really frustrated, because this would definitely make a difference on like a standard kids coloring book. You can always use them to just do dots or any type of texture. You don't have to fill in the entire area with them. These would work perfectly well just dotting, which is exactly what I did here. It's like a red and an orange version of this. It's either, no, I think they're out in the random stash now. I tossed them in there and I'm never going to find them again. So I'm not going to go looking because you'll be waiting 10 minutes for it. But I just did dots, and I think it's called pointillism. I don't know. I'm sure there's actually neither one of those is correct. But basically, you just make a lot of dots. If there's supposed to be more shading or shadow, you increase the number here. Like you can see here, it's almost filled in here at the bottom. And then for the areas that get more light, you just spread them out a little bit more. And I knew I could do this, and I've done it before, but when I got done trying it here, I actually really like it. And it adds some different textures to the overall picture. And you can do that with lines. You can do that. You've heard of Zentangling. I keep wanting to call it Zentangling. Where you just, you can use little, like a plaid pattern. You can use little swirlies, whatever. You don't have to just color it in straight up. You can always get a use, even out of the markers you do not want to actually just color like you would typically color with. Anyway, so that was one of my first examples I want to show you. I can't remember if I showed that one last Thursday. I probably did. So then I took another image from that book. I printed out on 3 types of paper. I used the same markers, though I also tossed in some colored pencil on this one. Colored pencils we will cover after we get through markers. And at the rate I'm going, I have no idea when that's going to be. Probably at least next week, if not longer out. But because I want to get through markers first, because there is a method to my madness. We're going to build upon the markers like you can see I did here. So for most of us, if you're limited in what type of paper you even have to print, let's say you have a sample page and you're able to get it printed either through your home printer or at the library, maybe they do like 10 cents a copy or something. And your typical run-of-the-mill printer paper, your copy paper, it's like, just what you see all the time. I printed out the image on that. I did a medium level kind of cardstock paper. And this is kind of a medium weight. And then I did this, I call marker paper, but it really is like a super smooth cardstock. This one is. I was trying it out, and it did work really well as, quote, marker paper, but it definitely was not on the cheap side. So I mentioned that in my last video. I highly recommend the Copic starter packs of like the 25 pages, because those are definitely a lot more budget friendly, especially if you're not sure if you're even going to want to print out on that type of paper and you're just trying it. Anyway, the reason I had done that is I wanted to show that if, wait, go that way. Okay, there we go. I still don't have my new stuff up. I know, I'm terrible. But the whole purpose of this was to show that it doesn't really matter, even if you just have standard copy paper, like printer paper, you can still color with it. You can still make something really pretty. And, granted, it may not be as well blended as, say, like a super smooth cardstock with the marker. I mean, I ain't gonna sit here and try to sell you some kind of line where, you can make your Crayolas look like Copics on printer paper. I mean, sorry guys, if anybody's figured that one out, then we need to get together, my friend, and because I'm pretty sure that would be a sound investment. But no, I'm not going to blow smoke in your ears and tell you that you can make Crayolas act like Copics on printer paper, or for any paper for that matter. That's not going to happen. But you can still work with what you have. I also use the Imagine markers. I use them on these little houses right here, the orange and the yellow, and then the Crayolas are up here, and you can even just see an initial difference in just the vibrancy this was also shredding the paper pretty good. Even on the super smooth marker paper, it was starting to rip it up. And I don't know if you can see that, but it's definitely got some graininess to it. So yeah, no. Use those for little detail work. I would say don't, just color straight over. So I did marker, and then I went over it with colored pencil in all of those brands. Well, just Crayola, Sargent Art, and Cra-z-art. So I think I do have the Imagine colored pencils, but at this point, we're not going to cover those because I really need to write all this out in paper and just set it in front of the camera before I even start talking for these, because I keep forgetting. The thing is, guys, I'm not going to be able to cover everything. There are probably at least, twice this many budget friendly, or let's say under $10 type of markers and colored pencils. And I know over in other countries, they might be different brands and things like that. I'm not going to get them all. It'd be nice down the road. I could always come back around, and, it's always nice to check out something new and something different, but I'm just going to cover what I have because it was a scramble enough just getting, similar looking markers between those and colored pencils between those three brands. And if I hadn't had my brother's, that random mess of markers, I probably wouldn't have even been able to do that. So don't feel discouraged if you can't go out and get a brand new pair of brand new pack of markers, and don't feel discouraged if all you can do is print something out on printer paper, or even use, the kids' coloring books with a really thin kind of grayish paper. If I have time, I'm going to color in that today. I'm not doing too well on time so far, am I? Anyway, just in case y'all missed out on that, that was kind of just a recap. So, what are we going to show today? Well, first off, I managed to find some Roseart markers because, of course, I had the other three brands. And I found these at Ollie's on Saturday, which I was super happy about. For some reason, I cannot find Roseart at Walmart or Dollar General or anywhere anymore. It used to be Roseart and Crayola, and then now it looks like it's Crayola and Cra-z-art. So this was a lucky find at Ollie's, or at least here in the U.S. And there were some available online at Amazon, and I'll get to that in a minute. All these aren't exactly the same, and I'll talk about that in a minute too. But essentially, they're all like, the smaller. They're not the broadline markers. The Rosearts were $1.80 for 10. The Crayolas I got at Walmart for, I think it was $1 for just your 10 basic colors. And these are your kind of fine point looking markers, your thinner ones. Though I'm sure the broad lines aren't too far off that price. And then the Cra-z-art, same way, these were about 50 cents. I do not have a box for the Sargent Art because I had bought, it was a while back actually. My husband had asked me to pick up some other markers too to color with. Actually, he's the first one that had started coloring a little bit, which is funny. Because I almost have to drag him over to the table to color with me sometimes now. But I picked up a little pack of Sargent Art. I think it was the 50 or the 30 at like Hobby Lobby or something. And it was this plastic pack, and it has been long gone. You see where they're all at now. So anyway, you can go on Amazon. I think, actually, I looked on Walmart's site. They do have an 8 count of the fine tip markers like these for Sargent Art for about $1.39. So we'll say $2 and under just with this basic, we'll call it a 10 set, an 8 set, whatever. This basic set of colors. So there's your markers there. All right, where am I going next? This is where I'm going next. So let me show these real quick. So what we have, of course, as I just said, we have now these are all going to be weirdly different colors because, again, I just really need to just I want to toss everything in the box, and I'm doing that and then remembering I need to hold on to them. So it just go with me on these. They're all going to be the same color, or the same sets colors. I guess the first disclaimer in that regard is I tried to get as close as I could color-wise between the 4 brands, and hopefully, well, it would help Michelle if you pushed it up a little bit so they can actually see what you're doing. Okay, there we go. That's a little better. But you can kind of see where I wrote the different names down around here. But like I said, I did try to get as close as I could with, say, like the greens and the purples and the yellows. The green for the Cra-z-art brand was a little bit brighter. It was more like a lime green than just your standard green marker, which of course I do not have readily available. So, but y'all, I mean, surely at this point, most of y'all know what that looks like. But we had like the Crayola finetip, I think is what they called these. You had your Cra-z-art ones, your Sargent Arts, and then your Rosearts. So these were the types of markers that I was using. And we'll pull those off to the side. So as you can see, this kind of shows you, and the color seems a little off on my monitor, but I think you guys can still get a pretty good idea. Maybe if I move the light away a little bit. Nope, that ain't gonna make anything better. Okay, that might be a little better. I didn't want the light to throw this off too much. So I use, like I said, this is Crayola Cra-z-art here, Roseart, and then your Sargent Art there. And this was the one I recorded the video on last night and then realized, no, we're not posting that. So the first thing I did, of course, was just a solid, color in the flowers here. And this is from Flower Mandalas. I actually did this picture on my very first live stream. Then Saturday, I went and got another copy of it because it was only $1 at Ollie's, and I figured it would be good for testing things out like this. So just some quick notes on when I was coloring with these. The Crayolas that I used, they're not the super tips, at least not here. Well, except we'll get to this inner circle in a minute. Let's just focus out here and ignore the purple bit in the middle. These are like your fine tips more. There you go. That's better. Make sure it's in focus, Michelle. Those are your fine tips for the Crayolas. I did figure out, so the drier the marker, the more damage it's going to do to your paper, and the finer the point, the more damage it will do to your coloring book paper. I mean, Creative Art has a pretty much medium range type of paper, which I love. And even the Crayola fine tip was shredding the page a little bit and causing it to pill up. And so, just keep that in mind. Those two basic things are something, there's not, the choices can get really overwhelming, but that's essentially what it boils down to. If you're using a higher quality or thicker type of paper, then you can probably use the finer point markers. But if you're using, like if I was using those Crayolas in a standard kids coloring book, I would have to be really careful with it not to shred the page. You can still do it, but you just got to be a little more careful. So the Crayolas came out good as expected. These are used, I'm not going to, I don't want anybody to twist my arm and ask me to make a choice, but I'd say to begin with, I would have said Crayola, particularly their super tips, which is not what I covered here, but I'll get to that in a moment. So I did a straight color and I did kind of a blend where I took like the markers and actually, well, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't drop something. So I took the markers and basically would touch them together. Other channels have shown this, particularly with alcohol markers like the chameleon markers, but you can do it with water-based. You can do them with anything. So you just touch them like to the tips like that. And you can kind of create a blend where you start out coloring and it's one color and then it'll gradually move to the other. And it worked actually kind of decent for 3 of the 4. Crayolas did fairly good with it. I also, just to see, kind of tried to blend them a little bit around the edge as well, just coloring one side and then the other. And they did a fair job on that. Your Cra-z-arts, these, I would say, other than that pack of markers were not, that I'm pretending is not there. These would be the next, like right above them on the ladder of like dry markers and potential damage to the paper because they are pretty dry markers. Their point is also, I don't know, a little more pointy. That is real descriptive, Michelle. But, I mean, even against just the fine tips, they seem almost more, I don't know. They look like how they're designed, they would be drier anyway. And that's exactly what happens, is they do some damage to the paper. So just keep that in mind. The blend did not work. As you can see, this is the one where you really didn't get any kind of blend even between the two opposite colors. Now, as with the other ones, though, like I said, if you have Cra-z-arts and that's what you have to work with, you don't have to just say, okay, well, I can't color because that's all I have. You can do, and I show the little dots here as well. And I did that with each brand. And the thing with Cra-z-art is I actually like how theirs comes out better, because if you can see, it's a more distinct dot and a point. So you could really get detailed with that and create some beautiful effects. The other ones, they bled a little more into the paper, so it's a little more muddled than it would be with the Cra-z-arts. So I have an overall marker favorite, or at least I thought I did, but you can use any of these markers for certain details. Like I said, if you have a whole box of random ones, then you've got a whole bunch of options right there for you. All right, so, and like I said, the green was a little bit brighter, more like a lime green, but as you can tell, it's actually pretty close to the ballpark for these others. So the color was a little off, but that was the only one. Rosearts, these were the big question mark for me and the reason I really wanted to try these. So one problem I ran into when I hit the Rosearts is, first off, I did not get the fine tip ones. I got super tip. Woo, there you go. And I'm rocking the camera. And I was showing you, did I show you the Crayola super tip? I may have, but I'll show that too. Did not realize they were the super tip. Yeah, that's a Crayola one. Did not realize they were super tip, but I mean, at this point, I started coloring with them, and then I was like, why do these feel different? And I figured it out. I was like, oh, well, okay, whatever. Because we're going to get into the types of markers there are here in a moment. So I went ahead and filled in with the Roseart. And I have to say, I'm very pleasantly surprised by these. I expected these to kind of be in the middle of the pack of these four. Just, I don't know, it was an assumption, I guess. And honestly, I kind of like them a little better than the Crayola. At least the super tip markers, I do. It went down so much smoother as a super tip. Like, if I found a fine tip version of them, it would have made more sense. It's not quite apples to apples, but whatever. It went down a lot smoother. The color is more rich. Like, your Crayolas give you more of like a vibrant pop of color, but your Rosearts will give you like a deeper color, especially if you go over with more than one layer. These seem to give a lot deeper color with that, and a lot richer color. So I was very pleasantly surprised by these, and they actually blended very well. Honestly, I think better than the Crayolas did. So yay for Roseart on that one. Surprise, surprise. This was Sargent Art. Do I have those? What have I done? I know I had one, of course. Oh well. Hang on. Sorry for the creaky. Found ya. Old chair. Sorry for the creaking, guys. So this is kind of your Sargent Art. These, they say they're fine tip markers, but I'm looking at them, guys. That is more of like a super tip. So then I started coloring with those, and I thought, man, I just can't catch a break. So these two were more of like a super tip type. These Sargent Art ones, I believe, are good for if you need a more muted, pastel-y kind of color. As you can tell, out of like the four, theirs was probably the not quite as vibrant as the other ones. It's a softer color. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. Because, yeah, the Stuffed Animals Jade Summer book I was coloring in the other day, I was just using permanent markers. And a lot of the things I colored were a lot brighter than I needed them to be. And what I should have done is actually reach for the Sargent Arts, because they would have gave me a little more muted color, which was what I was looking for. So yeah, like I said, all four of them, you can, I showed you can, all of them with the dots. I showed them with blends. You each each marker, there's not necessarily a bad marker or a good marker in these four. There's not a bad marker or a good marker in these four, but I think they all have strengths that can play well to whatever you're trying to do, or if you're trying something a little different. Now, my disclaimer on this, of course, is this is my opinion. I know there are people out there that love, like, I know some people love the Crayola brush tips, and we'll get to that in a minute. Some people love the super tips. Some of them can't stand the super tips and they like the broad markers. I mean, everybody, you have to try the stuff on your own. And that's why I was saying it makes so much more sense to just, you know, whatever you can find just to try out. I would highly recommend that, because while the Rosearts look really good, and I actually went ahead and ordered a set of the Roseart super tips now because I'm excited. And price-wise, they were right in line with the Crayola ones, I think, like right around $10. Now, these might slip up. Like I said, if you get a 100-pack of like the super tip Crayolas and stuff, you might start getting up into the $11 range, but we're just going to round it out and say about $10. But I really like the Rosearts, and I was really surprised by that. But I'm still going to keep all of these markers because I know I can use them all, and anyone can. But the thing is, if you go out and buy a 100-pack, I'm not telling anybody to go out and buy a 100-pack of super tips, because 9 times out of 10, if you haven't even tried them, you're going to do that. You're going to get them, and you're probably going to hate them. So anytime you can try a product before you buy it, or even just get a small $2 pack like I did, do that, please. Even if you're not really watching your budget, because, well, everybody's watching the budget. But if you're one of those that like, okay, well, I want to get a really good set of markers or a bigger set of markers, I still highly recommend trying out the smaller packs first, because like I said, you could wind up in a situation where you order a whole bunch of super tips and you just hate them. So now that we've said that, well, this is a lot. We're going a lot faster than I was last night, and that's kind of sad, I know. But so another reason I highly suggest you try before you buy, or just, you know, little 50-cent, $2 packs of these markers, because these types of markers are the ones that are going to be most readily available to everyone. And this was what I was going to say before, too, when I was talking about like Dollar General and stuff. You will see the Cra-z-arts and the Crayolas, or at least I do in my Dollar Generals. I live in Tennessee. I think they're at like Fred's and Family Dollar, all those different ones. You would think in those stores these would be a little cheaper, even just the 10 packs, but I'm telling you, they are overpriced compared to Walmart. So if you have availability for both of them, I would highly suggest you get these at Walmart instead, because these were 50 cents and I think these were $1. Actually, they were probably marked down further because I got them during the whole back to school thing. And that's another thing too. If you wait till like back to school or during like Christmas break for the holidays and stuff, they'll mark these down even more. And that gives you a lot more wiggle room for, you know, getting a good set of markers if you're able to, and that's what you want to do. So just a little tip there, and something I was really surprised at when I looked at the prices. And then, so reason number one, you want to try smaller packs before you really commit to something is so you know what brand of markers that you like and you don't like. The other reason I suggest that is because there is a odd variety. There's a surprising amount of goodness. What is wrong with me today? Guys, I hadn't had coffee in 2 weeks. Like, it is really starting to be a problem here. That's due to stomach issues. I'll talk about that later. But there's a surprisingly good amount of variety for your $10 under markers. So again, you have like your standard, you know, your big broad markers. These are the ones we all remember as kids. You know, you could be even as toddlers, and you get, most of the time when you get markers, you get these really big ones like this, and you just, yeah. If I think most people childhood, when they think of markers, this is pretty much what they think of. So you have your broad lines. Then you have what I had shown before. You have your fine line. and you've heard of fine liners. This is basically like a fine liner for just markers, but they also make fine liners with more of like just a regular ink base. And we'll cover those at some point too. But these have a really fine tip. These are excellent for detail work, like if you need to get in these tiny little spaces here. But if you're covering a wide area like this, you're going to be in for a long haul, and it's probably going to do more damage to the paper than, say, like your broad types of markers. Then you have, past that point, they're sometimes called fine point, but like with Crayola, they call them super tips. Roseart, they call them super tips. This is basically you're in between with the fine line and the broad line. I like these because they're good for both ends of the spectrum. You can get some detail work with them with the edge or the tip, and then with the edge of it, if you angle it right, you can actually cover a pretty decent amount of area with this as well. So with not nearly as much damage to the paper. And then if you move up a little, I don't know how long they've had these out, but Crayola has a brush tip now too. And I think I got a pack of, I hadn't showed them yet. Thank you, Anne, for showing me these. But this was a set of 32. I think this was right around maybe $10. They were oddly enough more cheaper on Amazon than they were Crayola. So I don't know. Go figure. That's why it pays to kind of look around online, because Amazon typically has overpriced Crayola products compared to even like Walmart, but they actually beat in this one. But anyway, they do have a brush tip now as well. And I've seen a lot of people using these, and that's why I was like, oh boy, I have to try these out. And the brush tips are fun because a lot of your more expensive water brush products and your water-based markers are going to have like a brush tip like this. So a good thing about trying all these different types out is, you know, if you end up liking coloring and you know eventually you're going to want to invest in something, trying the different types of the markers. I don't think there are chisel tip water-based markers. If there are, leave a comment, because if there are, I'm drawing a blank on them right now. But we're going to go through all the 4 different types, and I'm going to use these flowers to kind of show how they lay down, how they look when they're all being used on the same type of picture. So this is also Flower Mandalas, by the way. There we go. So I'm going to start with the one that everybody probably has either the biggest, this is the one they think of, or they may have this in their house more likely than some of the other types. Now, anytime when I started using markers, whether they're alcohol-based or water-based, one of the things I had to learn was that, you know, we all hate when they look like really streaky. You know, when you were coloring as a kid and you color a big area like this and it would just be like super streaky. And of course, as a kid, that doesn't bother you. But like, if you're just starting out coloring as an adult and you're doing, you know, and you're doing this and you notice you're getting streaks again and it's really annoying and you want kind of a smoother look. Basically, just all you need to do is when you're coloring, you're going to need to go a little slower than you typically would. And basically, you're just going to go over the area a few times like this with like small circles. Okay, well, see the broad tip, it's really hard to get into like this detail. So more than likely, at least if it were me, I would end up just going straight over into the little swirls here. So again, this is really good for covering a wider area, but you're going to have a problem with like more detail work like that. So if you're just starting out and you're not really too concerned about like detail work and stuff, these would be good to start with if you're looking into covering a lot of area. But I usually tip it at an angle. I keep going back over it, and then I kind of overlap behind it. I keep an eye on it as I work. If it looks like it's a little streaky somewhere, I will go back and go ahead and take care of that. You want to try to make sure you get it as even as possible before it starts drying. With your bigger markers like this, it won't dry quite as quickly. And and you'll be moving quick. You'll be moving around the picture quicker too. So you'll be able to see it a little better. And this takes practice. I mean, I'm not even saying I'm very good at doing that myself. I still sometimes have to go back and put in a second layer. But a lot of that has to do with your paper too. Like if you're using a thin paper type of coloring book, Create Space paper, Jade Summer pages, they will soak up the ink very quickly and they will dry very quickly. So you will have to kind of train yourself to work quickly with pages like that. It can be done, and I have done it. It just, you have to really, you can make anything work. I mean, theoretically, I could use anything I needed to on Create Space paper. As long as it's single-sided, I can make it work at least fairly well. Now, watercolors and stuff probably being the biggest exception, because if it's thin enough paper, it's just going to tear to pieces. So again, you can probably do it, and we may even try that. But yeah, so you have to keep that in mind as well. So if you're trying to figure out how to color and not get those kinds of streaks like that, like you can see here, I'm starting to move a little faster and it's getting a little streaky. Now, if you don't like having to constantly go back and watch it like that, basically just color the way you like to color, and you can always go back over with a second layer. As long as you do an even second layer, that should take care of it. If it's not even, it may still be an issue. I figured I was going to start coloring with this and that was going to be dry. Now, granted, I believe it is getting on the dry side, this marker, but it's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. So I'm not a super neat person when I color. I know, big surprise, right? Like if you've been around for a while, that shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. So yeah, I'm going to go out the lines. Good gracious. Go out of the lines some. And having a more broad line marker like this is a little more precarious for me in terms of that. A lot of times, like with chisel tip type alcohol markers, I do struggle. Most of the time I have to color like really close to the edge and then come back through with like the bullet tip or a brush tip or something to get the outer edge if I'm trying to be really careful. So, I think that's good enough. Yeah, we'll keep going. Why not? I think the only other thing I had for this one was to, now see, I'm just going to go ahead and speed up and we'll see what happens here. I am very slow when I color, so this, again, probably is nothing new to the people that have watched some of my videos before. So I figured I'd move a little faster too, just to see what happens. So, and you may have a preference for one type of water-based marker or a type of marker, like I said, like a chisel tip or something. But really and truly, if you really love using, say, Crayolas or Sargent Arts or all markers, that seems to be me here lately. It's nice to actually have a variety to choose from, because like in this case, I would have probably went up to the very edge of this flower and then I would have picked up one of the fine tips or the super tip or something and went into the little detail part. Now, the super tip for me is a good happy medium because I can kind of do both. My cat is deciding to use a box as a scratching post, if you're wondering what that noise is. They are surprisingly, like, not present when I'm recording here lately. I'm not sure why. But sure enough, if I'm sitting here and getting ready to work or getting ready to really focus on something, they all just come one right after the other in line to just aggravate me as much as possible. Now, I'm sure I'm missing a couple of parts, but I think that's good enough. Anyway, that's a pretty good, I mean, there's a little bit of streakiness to it, but It's not bad. It's not bad at all. And if you're one of those that is way too slow for you and you can't color that slowly, then that's where multiple layers come in handy. So now we're going to move down to the super tip, which is probably the next largest type of marker in water-based markers. And like I said, honestly, I really like the super tips, me personally, because I feel like they're a good medium point. So like I said, you can cover a lot of area. For me, they put out a little more ink. Now, that may also very well be the fact that the broadline markers I have were from the ancient marker stash. So it may just simply be that they have dried up more. I purchased the super tips myself separately, so that could have a lot to do with it as well. But I don't know. It's how they feel. Like, just I feel like I have more control over them. So I actually really like them. Especially, like, I haven't even tried the brush tip ones yet. But before that point, if I had to make a decision between the three other options, I easily would pick like a super tip format. And Crayola is not the only product that offers that kind of variety. When I was looking around online, I believe Sargent Art offers a brush tip version. They also offer the broadline markers. We saw what was essentially a super tip, even though they said it was a fine line. So they may actually have like an ultra fine line out there somewhere too. Roseart, I know, has the super tip type, the broad lines, and then Cra-z-art probably has a good mix too. So whichever brand, if you get to the point that you want to purchase one of them and you want to look at one of those brands, definitely do some research. Because like I said, a lot of times they not only offer different colors and stuff for a brand, but they do offer different types of markers as well. So anyway, I am trying to remember what I was talking about last night. There is no telling. You guys know how I get if I try to do late night videos. And for a lot of you, y'all are like, yeah, this is why you should do late night videos. No, probably not a good idea. As I've said before, the filter on my mouth disappears as the day goes on. So I try really hard not to do late night videos because I'm at the point I just don't care. and then like I said, last night I was listening to it wasn't anything bad. I think I was just rambling more than anything just because I was really tired. For once, weirdly enough, for once my husband was not feeling well yesterday, and I say for once because his immune system's pretty on point, and I've always been the sickly one of us too. And he really did not feel well yesterday, and he had laid down some throughout the day, but then he went in there laid down, might have been around 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. And I was sitting here and I did that video and I'd been coloring and just messing around for a bit. And I look up and it's like midnight or 12:30 and I hadn't heard a peep from him. And I was like, oh no, I hope he's okay. Because he's really stubborn. And I figured I would assume if it's bad enough, he would give it up and say, okay, we need to go to the emergency room. But it was just weird. I'm not used to, he never sleeps like that, and he slept through till this morning, and fortunately I think he's feeling a little better today. So yeah, that was really strange. But so I was trying to sit in here and be quiet. I'm on the other side of the house with where I do my recording and stuff, so hopefully I was able to at least stay kind of quiet. The cats were going crazy though. Here lately, the typical routine's been, I've had to start taking some medicine at different times in the evening. I went and I saw a sleep specialist last week because just it's been getting worse and there's just been no solution really. And so my doctor had referred me, and it took, like a month plus to get in to see her. And so we went over my history and everything. And what she wanted me to do was, first off, shift some of my medications around because I take Wellbutrin, which most of you know are probably somewhat familiar with, at least hearing about it. It is an antidepressant, and one of the side effects of it is that it can cause insomnia. And I do take a dose at night, so she wanted me to take that like earlier in the day. Now I'm being a little sloppy with this one because I'm just mostly not really paying much attention. But it is, if you're being careful, at least for me, it's a whole lot easier to avoid coloring something else with these because you can, if you go slow, do as I do, not as I say, you can do pretty good without pushing into other detailed areas. So I had to shift some medications around. She wanted me to slowly go off my sleep medication. She wanted me to go down to like half of one for 3 days and then half of one every other day and then just stop it completely. And I'm like, negative. Because what happened when I tried to do that was exactly what I assumed would happen. Is that's all fine and good if I've been getting fairly good sleep and I do that and I don't sleep well one night, it's not a huge deal. Then if I don't sleep well the next night because of that, it starts getting bad. And then by the third night, nobody wants to be around me and I can't work, I can't function, and it's awful. So I have went down, I've cut it in half at least, and it's worked. I mean, it's been all right. It hasn't been any worse, at least. And I will probably try to cut that down even further this week. I'll give her credit. She seems like she wants me to do some different stuff that I haven't tried before or nobody's ever suggested. So I'm, as much as I was a little taken aback by her demeanor, I'm willing to give it a shot because it is something different. And it's not, she didn't just throw up her hand and say, okay, well, that's that. I mean, she at least made a suggestion. And like I said, it really hasn't had any negative effect in terms of my medication at this point. So the other thing is I'm supposed to be keeping a sleep diary, which I have not been doing. I was sitting here trying to look as a comparison, and it may just be this hasn't dried yet, but this looks a little brighter than that. Now, to be fair, again, I have the 100 pack of the super tips. And again, it would help if I put this in the camera so y'all could actually see what I was doing. And this, I'm using like the very smallest tip of those. I guess you would call like the 3 classic types of these kinds of markers. Now, I am not going to color this whole flower in this little fine tip. I'm just going to tell y'all right now because we'll be here another hour if I'm doing that. So I might get like 1 petal because I do want to show how that works. But so yeah, you really got to work at this a lot more. I'm trying to use the same tactic that I was using with the other markers. The biggest problem with that is if you want to go back over like a second layer or even trying to go back to prevent streaks, that is where your paper damage is going to come into play. Like, it's not too bad if I'm just like coloring like this, but the moment I start going over it multiple times, it starts pilling up the paper. So just keep that in mind. Again, there are no good, I mean, really and truly, out of all these, there is a use for all of them. There is a strength for all of them. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you one's better than the other. I'll just tell you, I mean, for me, it's just kind of showing you, like, if I'm in this situation, this is the one that I would use, and this and that. So, okay. Yeah, we're lucky we had this 1 petal, and we're just going to say good. Because, yeah, I mean, just like I said, I'm just barely trying to go back over these little areas that I didn't quite get, and I can already feel the paper, like, really shredding. And with this type of paper, with the Creative Haven type paper, that is it must be pretty rough if it's doing that. All right, now we get to try the new fun one. We're going to pull this down a little bit so I can actually get to it. And this is the brush tips. So let's see how these go. And funny enough, I have not used brush tips very much. And if I do, I'm using them usually more as like watercolors, or I am, yeah, I haven't used them as much as you would think. I think all the water-based ones I have are brush tips. Like I said, if I have a brush tip, a lot of times, unless it's like my Copics or something, I'm using it for like to put down a watercolor wash. So I'll usually just put it on a palette and then use a water brush. Though I have been trying here lately to actually use them as the, original intent as just markers themselves. But again, I am not super good at using them. There are other people that, they live and breathe by brush tip markers. So these are nice. They feel a little stiff. Even with the brush tip, there's not a lot of give to them. So usually with a brush tip marker, with the type of give that you get with the nib, you can, it's a little more forgiving, I guess. I can be a little looser with it. Now this one isn't quite as soft a nib as most other brush tips would be. So I can't quite be as, like I would with, say, like my Copics or my Arteza water brushes. So instead of scrubbing it back and forth, it seems like I'm having better luck actually, using a brush like motion with it. Big surprise right there, Michelle. But yeah, I actually kind of dig these. Once you get used to using it, it's actually pretty nice. I think I would use these definitely if I printed something out on the marker paper. These would be great to try out like some actual blending with. Which you could, I showed you could do blending with any of the markers, but I think these would be the most interesting because of the simple fact that you can kind of create that area where you can blend the two colors in. Where you just kind of, oh my gosh, what is it called? Flicking. That's it. Flicking. Actually, I'd be curious to try that here in a minute. I don't know how well it will do with this paper because this is not a surface where the markers stay wet for a while. It's not as bad as like Create Space paper, but you definitely like most of the techniques that I use water with, I don't use a lot of water, so it actually works very well. But if I was using like actual wet on wet watercolor washes and stuff, I don't know how well this paper would do. Okay, let me grab another. Hey, this is marker I happen to have, so we're going to do some reds with some purples. Because now I'm curious. So we're going to go out a little bit with the red. And then I just said what this was called. Now I can't remember. Oh, well, whatever. So, yeah. So with these, you don't want to scrub back and forth. You want to actually do like, common sense. You want to treat them like actual brushes with the brush tip, right? Like, again, I don't understand how that wasn't obvious to me from the get-go. So I have a purple. That was the one I had the closest access to. So let's try this. And sorry if the scratchy paper bugs you. That's something, to keep in mind with the markers is that, again, these are not going to be your highly pigmented, super juicy type markers. So they're not going to be quite as smooth and quiet on the paper. So if that kind of stuff really bothers you, like that scratchy sound, then These may not be a good choice. Any drier budget type marker will probably cause you to grit your teeth and really get aggravated. So let me layer in a little more red. Now again, this isn't like marker paper. So it's not going to be a perfect blend. And that's the thing, like, you can have budget markers and even using them on higher quality paper, you will see actually some very, very interesting results. I plan to do one of the segments is going to be, of course, like the budget watercolor, either like the pencils or the watercolor pans, and everything in between. And I had found some Crayola watercolor pencils when I was actually getting the others, and I thought, I've never seen these before. I really want to try these. And I did, and I tried them on like the watercolor paper. Oh, they were so good. Like, I couldn't believe how good they were. I mean, again, they're not like, they're not Tombos, they're not like Derwents or anything, but they did pretty darn good for a Crayola watercolor pencil. My biggest disappointment is that it's only available at most in the 24 pack. I want them to make more because I really like those. Anyway, that's not too bad. Now, granted, some of this might be just user error. I wouldn't blame any of the streakiness on the marker. That's mostly just me not knowing what the heck I'm doing. I haven't done a lot in terms of marker blends like this. Not as much as I should. I'm really out of practice on that. But anyway, it is actually, if I continue to work with this on probably, sorry, cat drama. Oh, stop. It's not that dramatic, really. I think last night was also Scamper too, so she just does not like any of the other cats. And of course they sense that. Anyway, so just to recap, this is your broad tip. Whoop, push back up. It's your broad tip marker like this. Always make sure sometimes the caps don't want to go on these markers very well. So always make sure they're actually closed. This is your more broadline marker, which will, of course, cover a lot more space a lot faster. It may tend to streak a little more because of that. And if you have a lot of detail work like this, unless you get really, really used to these, it might be a little harder to go around like fine details. This is your super tip. This is kind of your middle of the road between a broad line and a fine point. I would say if somebody had to make me tell me I had to make a choice, it would probably be this type of marker overall, because I can cover a wide area with it, but I can also turn it to the point and get the detail works a little easier with this. So this is kind of a happy medium. If you have to like pick, if you had to pick one and to get a pack of, I would say that middle of the road is probably a good one. And then this one was the smallest tip, the fine tip. I only did one petal because Crayolas, they're not as dry as others, but even with that type of tip, you're still going to get some damage to your paper. So these, I would say, for like this little bit here in the middle, if you had little fine detail work like that, that is exactly where you would want to use these markers, because you're going to definitely be able to get into the lines more. You're not going to be touching it enough and going over it again and again to really damage the paper. And if you're messy like me, this helps keep you from coloring outside the lines as much. So yeah, this is the best use for me for this type of fine tip marker. So, and generally when you use fine liners, you can cover a lot of area with them. They're not quite like regular fine liners, probably aren't as damaging as these are even. You can color with them a bunch of different ways, but fine line, I guess, again, kind of makes sense. But anyway, that's neither, whatever. And then you have your brush tips, which, like I said, this is the very first time that I have tried to use the Crayola brush tip. And so this is going to be a bit of a learning curve for me. I can do blends. I just am going to have to be a little more careful with it and play with it a little bit more. This was just a random, okay, let's see what it does. And it didn't do too bad. Again, if it looks a little muddy, that's just purely because I'm an idiot. And these are definitely the ones you don't want to, if you want the markers where it feels more like a paintbrush, and it makes sense because it's a brush tip, this is the better way to do and go. And with these, instead of scrubbing back and forth like you would with most other markers, you're probably going to just want to kick out lines like this. That will help avoid damaging the paper as much. That will probably give you a smoother, more consistent color. And it won't feel like you're necessarily fighting with it as much. So I do like them. Like I said, I actually want to use them more even this week. So I'm going to have to look into that. And other than the brush tips, I think most of the other types of these markers are probably, you could probably find them depending on how many you are looking for. If you're actually going out to buy these, if you're getting a 100-pack of like the super tips, either Crayola or Roseart, or you get like the 32 count of these brush tip markers, you can look for US maybe around $10, $11, at least what I've seen at my Walmart and online. Where you live, that may be different. So, and then if you're just wanting to try them out with like a 10-pack, the brush tips, I don't know if are available in that size, but the other ones, you can go to your Walmart or dollar store and find those for, 50 cents to $2 basically. So anyway, I think that's pretty much it for this one. I did a little better than I did last night. I was hitting 2 hours last night, and I was like, oh my goodness, no, we're not going to do that. So this isn't too bad, actually. I think I'm going to take a break, and I had put dinner in the crock pot. So I think I'm going to go and take a little bit of a break. Then I'm going to come back and see if I can actually get some coloring done, because I don't remember which video I said this in yesterday, but I did. I realized a couple of days ago I had finally been able to color the other night, but I hadn't recorded a video of me coloring in like 2 weeks. The only videos I had were just like updates and flip throughs and stuff. So I was like, oh my goodness, I am really slacking on this coloring side of this channel, which I'm also slacking in the cats too. But like I said, they've been kind of shy. I'll have to go get clips of them, and then I guess use my actual webcam software so I can throw all the video together. So anyway, I really like these. And like I said, all of these now I may throw the brush tips in there too. We'll just see. But all these are going to go into my little system that I'm coming up with. And at this point for me, I'm going to do them by color. So, if I have I have a section of blue, just water-based markers like this. I'll have my Rosearts, my Sargent Arts, my Crayolas, whatever in there, the different sizes. They're just going to be done by color, because while I love having all my neat little supplies in their cases, that is not working for me right now, because some people like to color with just one particular brand of whatever they're using. I'm just going to go ahead and finish this while I'm talking. Some people like to just use, maybe only Prismacolors or only Faber-Castell or something. And there are times I want to do that too. But more and more, when I first started out, I assumed that's how I would be. And now just, 3 or 4 months? Guys, it feels like so much longer than that. 3 or 4 months since I started the channel, I guess. We'll go from that point. But after 4 months or so, for me, I will grab every type of brand marker, pencil, whatever, and use it all together. And so then I wind up, I have 2 bins of like work in progress supplies. And what happens is they get really full. And it's all completely random stuff. There'll be Prismacolor markers, there'll be Crayola pencils in there and then I have to spend like hours putting them all back where they're supposed to go. So for me, that system's not working. Now for some of my stuff, like my Tombos, my Prismacolors and stuff, I will probably keep those in a separate case just because those are the ones that if I'm going to just use one brand, that probably will be like the ones that I reach for, probably the more artist grade materials. But for everything else, I am seriously just going to toss, like all the water-based markers are going to go together by color, except for maybe my Tombos. Maybe, yeah, probably my Artezas too will stay in their cases because they're already in a case and swatched. So yeah, they're swatched. So yeah, those will probably stay in a case, but I am not going to swatch all the Crayolas together and put them in their own case. Like, this is going to get excessive. I will have just stacks of cases, and I will spend all my time doing, trying to put everything back up, because while I love the idea of being organized, I'm not very good at maintaining it. So for me, there's going to have to be a different system, and I'll show you guys whenever I actually get that done. It's been a slow work in progress, but now that I've done this segment, my water-based markers were probably the worst ones. So, and I will be keeping my alcohol and water-based ones separate because I don't want to reach for, let's say, like an alcohol marker if I'm working on a 2-sided page type of coloring book. And knowing me and how scatterbrained I am, I would do that and start coloring and realize, oh no, and it's bleeding to the other side. So anyway, so now I can start that off with these markers, which would be a great thing to start with. So what's next? I thought I'd add another layer. So when you look at like the color saturation here, like I said, the super tip seems a little like a slightly more orangey red than the broad tip, but I just grabbed a random one. I do not have those swatched, so I'm not going to sit there and say that that's just a characteristic of super tips. That's just characteristic of I'm not organized. It was close. It was as close as I could get. Your fine tip looks very similar in color, and this dried a little lighter. Though I will say, for using this type of stroke to color it in, you're not getting a lot of streakiness. And if you're using these for like blends and stuff, you're going to kind of want that anyway. The more I'm using this, actually, the more I like it. You just got to kind of get used to it. Oh, so yeah, what's next? And that second layer really is adding a little more vibrancy to it. And I'm not being super neat about it, but next up, I will be doing this for permanent markers. I have some generic ones that I have bought. I think there were some dollar store ones I bought to try, and I tried them a little bit. I was going to do those in a separate type of video, but that was long before I got inspired to do this whole series. Then I found these at Walmart. They are, it just says fine tip permanent markers. So Pen Gear seems to be the brand. I'll have to figure out how much these were, but they certainly were cheaper than like Sharpies and stuff at Walmart. Sharpies are weirdly high at my local Walmart. Those and Bics, I have better luck finding those online, and we're going to talk about that more during that video. But just to give you an idea, this is probably, you know, when you're looking at $10 or less, your Sharpies and your Bics are going to be your right off the bat. Your permanent markers like that are going to be your right off the bat ones you want to try out. So when that will happen, I hope later this week. Heck, if I'm motivated enough, I might do it later tonight, and then I'll actually have it to schedule. And y'all are sitting there going, yeah, right. We know you better than that. Anyway, I hope this is really helpful. I called this Marker Wars just because it sounded cool, you know, like we've got knives involved or something, and or it's like some kind of weird basketball tournament or something. But really and truly, like I said, you can tell from this one and the one I showed before, any of these markers that I've sampled with here, they're all good. I will use each brand for, if I'm looking for something specific or distinctive, I will use all these brands. And actually, probably what I would have done today had we not went over a little bit, maybe that will be what I start recording next. That's actually my plan, is I'm going to shift to a coloring book, and we're going to try to use as much as we can in one picture. So one of the things I plan to do, I showed this in my little flip through new supply video yesterday. I found this at Ollie's. It was 90 cents. It was in the kids section. And I mean, guys, you know me. If it has cats or kittens, especially on the front cover like this, I am going to be drawn to it. Like, if you're starving and there's a bakery going full force somewhere, that smell's just going to draw you in. A cat's going to draw me in. And these come with stickers. And I think I joked yesterday, I wonder what would happen if you put the stickers on the cat's paws. I'm not going to do that. Mine are, they're spoiled to death, and they're not tormented at all. They like to act like they're tormented, especially when I'm not feeding them as much as they feel they should be fed. But anyway, these are super adorable. I absolutely love them. I also wanted to get this because, like I said, as I showed with, you can color with any markers that you have. Don't feel like you have to go out and buy something specific, or that you can't color anything until you get something specific. I had started this page as kind of a tester, and this was my original idea until I got into the showing the markers actually against each other. And I'm using, of course, the super tips for this. Now, the only thing with this, now they're pushing the bowls around. That's kind of a, hey, I'm hungry, and it's nowhere near their mealtime. The one thing with these types of coloring books, and like I said, these are your standard kids type coloring books. And I have a couple of these that I really love. This one in particular, I just adore. But the thing to keep in mind here, I don't think it matters what type of marker you use. This is a water base and it's bleeding through. Alcohol base is going to do it. Probably colored pencils and gel pens will at least ghost. I mean, these are really thin pages. As I was coloring this in, I could actually see some of the line art from the other side. So if you're going to do that, pick a page where, if it's like an activity book, they may have like a puzzle or something on the back of that other page. If your kids have already done that or whatever, it's like their coloring book, then that would be a great one where you could color on the other side. Or if you're just not, like, I wasn't a big fan of this one, so I was willing to sacrifice it for the greater good, so to speak. But I mean, I'm just doing the same thing here. And I hope to be able to actually do this. I'd love to, because we just saw what I call like a medium range type of paper. I would love to get some pictures going where I'm using like all kinds of different ranges of budget markers and gel pens and stuff on pictures, just to show that not only can you color and love what you're coloring in this type of book, you can, I mean, I could use Rosearts in my Joanna Basford Artist Edition book, and it will look just as nice. So it's not, you can mix and match in this kind of thing any way you want to. And, you know, some people might disagree with me on that, but I'm going to show you all a little bit of this. So basically, I'm using a super tip, and I'm doing exactly like I was doing on in the Creative Haven book. It's just I'm going kind of slow. I'm putting down solid color. I'm overlapping a little. Sometimes I'll use circles. Sometimes I'll just do this. It doesn't seem to make much of a difference for me. You actually, if you keep looking, you can start to see a little bit of line art from the other side. But yeah, and put a page protector behind it, like a couple pieces of like a piece of cardboard, some junk mail, something like that. Who was I watching today? Was it Tia? There was a video I was watching of completed pages, and I laughed. I was so happy because she opened one of her coloring books, and it had like just some of those junk mail envelopes. and they all looked like this with all the different random scratches on it. And she's like, yeah, you know, I have swatches in my swatch book, but you know, sometimes I just want to grab a scrap piece of paper and use them. And I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And it made me so happy to see someone else do that. And so now I don't feel quite as bad for y'all seeing that. I've got a swatch book. Now, granted, like my Crayolas and stuff aren't swatched, but sometimes I'm just lazy. I don't feel like going and getting the book. And here lately, I just haven't really been in the mood for like picking a palette. I've just been kind of winging it, which has blown up my face a few times, but I've managed to get past it. So that's awesome. Anyway, so one of the only other things I'll say when you're coloring with markers like this, and like I said, I'm using it at kind of an angle to get that really broad side of it to cover more area. The only other thing I would say, because this is a type of paper that will probably dry pretty quickly with your marker, keep going back and forth like this. Like just keep going. Either you start in the middle and keep making a bigger and bigger circle, but just constantly go back and forth like this so you don't really give the marker time to dry. If you do it like this and you work quickly enough, depending on the page, then it will definitely, there'll be less chance for streaks because you're putting wet marker over still wet paper. So you're not going to get like those lines that, I mean, I'm okay with in sometimes, but if you're really not wanting those lines, this is a good way to do it. And your lighter colors are going to give you more trouble with streaking. So like this is a pretty deep orange color, so it's not as bad. Like a black or a brown would do good. But if you're using like a yellow or a pastel blue or something, you may have to go back over it a second time. I mean, I'm not great at doing this. I still have a long ways to go in terms of learning techniques and stuff. But I mean, even in this regard, you can see, you know, and you see it on the rest of the cat too. This is the same thing I did with the rest of the cat, and it's super smooth. I don't even have any streaks. I really like this picture. And what's fun about these, because I mean, it's not super detailed. This is a great place if you think at some point you would like to add in your own art to a page. These types of coloring books and pages are absolutely perfect for that. Because like here, you just have a blank space between the box and the mouse and stuff. And so then what, you know, you can add all kinds of stuff to it. So just, you know, like I said, this could be as much fun for me as coloring in, what's a book I haven't even started, like Rhapsody in the Forest or something. I could have just as much fun with this, or, okay, Marjorie Sarnet's books. They're incredibly detailed and I love them, but I could have just as much fun with this than I can with that. So again, don't get down on yourself. I always love, like I said, let's keep doing a variety of things to show people that, you know, there's all kinds of different ways that you can color and get some great effects and to have some really awesome pictures. So I just, like I said, don't get discouraged if you have, you know, a box of random markers or colored pencils and you know you feel overwhelmed, you don't know where to start, you don't know if you can start, but you can. So any other tips in terms of, let's say, $10 or less type of water-based markers, please leave them in the comments. Again, this is not going to be an end-all be-all for these because I just can't cover it all. Down the road, it'd be really nice if I can keep up some of these segments with some new products, but yeah, no, I want to make sure, I don't mind trying stuff out, but I also want to make sure what I get, I'm actually going to use. And if I'm not, for some reason, that I have a good home for it. So don't want anything gathering dust. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.